And welcome to today's episode of the Dairy Hour podcast. I am your host, Val Lavigne, and I am joined today by a man, which we don't actually normally have men on here, but I know this guy is no stranger to being in a room full of women in ag, and he is fantastic at everything he does. Mr. Paul Hansen. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Val. Thanks for making me blush, though.
Oh, you're welcome. So I was teasing, I've known Paul for a few years now, and I was teasing him because he was out at the Dairy Girl Network conference, which I'm sure that he learned a lot just like the rest of us did. He was just the odd man out, if you will. But we're all very happy to have him be a part, and he does a fantastic job at all the different things that he does. So, Paul, if you want to start by just kind of telling us a quick synopsis of what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I'd love to. So my role that I have today is a manager of leader development. So I work for Land O'Lakes, and what that entails is my job is to develop our member owners and provide opportunities for them to grow their skills, look for leadership opportunities for them as well. And the hope is that we engage with the members, we get them to understand more about the co-op, learn some new skills that can help them go out and be an advocate for Land O'Lakes, the industry of agriculture, dairy, and then maybe one day be on our board of directors. So as a cooperative, we still have our members who make up our board. So I'm kind of the beginning part of that process of recruiting them, getting them active and engaged with the hope that down the road they'll continue to engage with us and potentially be on our board of directors.
That was a really, I guess that I kind of knew about what you did, but I don't know if I've ever heard you word it quite like that. So that's just really exciting. And I wish that more cooperatives, companies, things like that, I wish that they would spend more and invest more in that future. And we're going to touch on this a lot throughout the podcast. It's really great of Land O'Lakes to have that foresight to be thinking, hey, we're going to need board members in the future because people don't last forever and people need to move on. New leadership needs to come in. So it's important to have those next members of the board be ready to step up and educated so that they can hit the ground running rather than, end up in the boardroom and be like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to even begin with this. I don't know what that means. So that's a really exciting thing that Land O'Lakes does. And I've heard really great things about the program that you foster, Paul. So, but I want to back up for a little bit. And I want to, if you want to chat a little bit about where you live, more on a personal side, and then we're going to back it up into where Paul came from.
Oh boy. Yeah. So I've actually lived here in the Twin Cities for 23 years now. So I didn't originally start here, but transferred in because of a job. And we can cover that as I tell a little more of my history too. But yeah, moved up here 23 years ago and met my wife up here. And so we now live in Plymouth, Minnesota, and have been here 10 years. No, 9 years we've been in this house. So
very good. And so where were you born?
Yeah. All right. So we'll go back to the beginnings of things. I was born in Red Oak, Iowa. Well, actually Guthrie Center, Iowa, but grew up most of my life in Red Oak, Iowa. Parents still live back there as well. And we've lived in that town for, I don't want to say how many years because then I'll be giving away my age a little bit. And age is only a number. And
only had you pegged at 30, so you're good.
I appreciate that. Sometimes I think that way, but yeah, the body reminds me other times that I'm a little older than that now.
So what did your parents do when you were growing up? Were you involved or, were they involved in agriculture? Were they not involved in agriculture? How did that go about?
Yeah. So they are actually the first generation off the farm. So both my grandparents on each side of the family were in agriculture, were farmers. One was more into grain and livestock and shipping. So had a transportation company in that. And then the other side was more what I called the hobby farm. They had a little bit of everything from a garden, chickens, a few pigs, and they also had about 15 dairy cows. And so any excess that they had from what they needed, they took to town and sold. And so kind of grew up with both of those kind of backgrounds. But by the time I came around, my dad's side of the family had retired, actually. And so I grew up in town, but most of my dad's job as I was growing up were either selling feed or seed or some implement until he went full-time military. Growing up like that, it was great because I could get to go on ride-alongs. And so go with him out to the farm, visit the producers and that was always my favorite part. Or be around, clean up the feed store, whatever it may be too. My mom was a beautician, so kind of a different side of the business that way, but she eventually ended up buying her own business and having that. So it was kind of fun to be a part of a family that owned a business as well, to kind of see how small business works and get a better understanding of that. And so, yeah, I grew up as the city kid, but around agriculture. I mean, Red Oak is a smaller town, around 6,000 now. So agriculture is a major part of the economy. And so the co-op's a big company in town. And so you were around it all the time. And those were many of my friends in high school or school kind of growing up as well, that they were farmers. And so we just continued to kind of stay engaged that way. And I guess when the time came to enroll in like ag ed classes or FFA in high school, I was mainly thinking about it from a leadership standpoint, enjoying the things that the FFA offered. But as I was taking the classes and studying, realized this is an industry that I love. I like everything about it. I'm fascinated to learn by it. Not every topic in school was something I could say I was fascinated to learn about, but this was one of those that it was just like, yeah, this is the industry I want to be in.
Awesome. And then, so you were involved in FFA. Were you involved in 4-H at all? What other outside activities did you do?
Yeah, I was kind of the hodgepodge, or the mix across the lines of things. So FFA was a big one that I did. I did not do 4-H. Being in town, it wasn't as easy to kind of join a club that way too. Most of them were kind of divided up amongst the rural areas. But then I was involved in sports. I did cross country and track, and tried to do basketball, but I'm a little short for that. And then I also did like music. And so we had a small musical that we did at the school every year. And then we also had a special group called the Mini Singers. So I was part of that. So one of those who was kind of across the various groups in high school.
Well-rounded.
Yeah, you could say that.
Good. And I did not ever think of you as like used to be a singer kind of thing. So see, you learn something new about someone every day, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. So now you are getting towards the end of high school. You're getting ready to figure out where you're going in life. What, drove you to go where you went?
Yeah, so I only applied to 2 colleges. One was Northwest Missouri State, so it was close to home, had actually decent price in terms of going there, but it was also a smaller school. So not as big of classes. And the concern was that you go to college and you get lost at a large university. And actually, I wasn't scared by that at all. And so the other place that I applied that I ended up going was Iowa State University. And so I got into there, was super excited. It also made sense because I was a state FFA officer. And so being centrally located in the state for all the activities throughout the year just made more sense. And when I visited, I loved the campus. Even though it was bigger, that's part of what I enjoyed. It's a land-grant university, so it's a little bit more spread out. And so you get to enjoy the campus a lot more. And so, I applied there. I actually started it as ag economics or ag business. And then that first semester, you sit down with your advisor, right? And they set down like, here's the next 4 years. And it's all mapped out of what you could take. And I'm like, why are there so many economic classes? Like, what is the deal? And they're like, well, business, you got to understand that. And I'm like, where are the human interactions and the connections? And, that's a big part of what I noticed growing up of selling. Like these ride-alongs with my dad. He never came right out and started talking about the economics of doing something. He talked about who they are, how they're doing, what's going on, how's life. And then finally we get to, what are your needs? Like if it's feed, like what are you hoping to do? Or what are you looking at? Or what do you need in that way? Okay. I mean, it was never a numbers thing. And so as I looked at all the economics, I'm like, this is not going to work. We're going to have to switch. So at that time, they did not offer like an ag communications. They didn't offer the leadership tracks that they have today. So the other option was basically ag education. And with that, there's 2 tracks, certified to teach or not certified. The difference is you go student teach and are in the classroom and take a couple of others, design classes and those things on how to design a curriculum. And so I was like, well, I'll go that route. Good skills to kind of have. And so I did go ahead and get certified to teach, did my student teaching. You talk about being the lone man out. Even at that time, I helped coach the girls' track team as I was student teacher, partly to learn more from the coach, but also partly because I hadn't really coached and mentored a lot of girls. And so this was a good opportunity to have that practice as well. And so it was kind of a natural fit. But in my mind, as I'm getting this degree, I didn't have any intent on going back into the classroom. I'd spent enough time in ag ed high school classrooms through the FFA. I knew that wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be, but I didn't know how to go about getting to where I wanted, which was kind of thinking more corporate training and development, which at that time was still relatively new. Like not every company had corporate learning and development. And so being relatively new and just kind of coming out, I was like, probably not going to get that job. And I actually had that advice given to me. Somebody's like, no offense, you're a great facilitator, presenter, but people aren't going to hire a 23-year-old out of college to come in and train them. Your best bet is go get a job with a company that you like and then kind of see where it takes you from there, get some experience. And so at that time, I was fortunate I had an internship. So encourage anybody in college to take internships, as many as you can. They're fantastic. But I did one with Cargill, and it was in actually feed formulation. So a lot of things keep going back to feed side of stuff. But as I was taking that internship or getting done with it, I was like, certain aspects of it I really enjoyed. One of those was merchandising, buying ingredients to make the feed. And so kind of stayed in contact with them, and a job came open in Blair, Nebraska. And so out of college, that's where I went to work as a merchandiser buying corn. In Blair, in case geography don't know, it's only about an hour from my hometown. And so I was buying grain from a lot of people in the same area that I knew of Iowa. So it felt like, hey, this is easy, kind of going back home. But it also made a great, they call them like, oh, you're not going to know where I'm from. Give me a try. And so they'd mention where it's at. I'm like, oh, where these two roads intersect, and, be able to give them some landmarks. Like I knew where they're from. And that was something that they weren't used to. So, that's kind of what getting through college and coming out. Didn't go into teaching, actually went and got a job at a company.
All right. So you are in Nebraska, graduated college, and then what happens next?
Well, I took an opportunity to go do a different job with Cargill for like 6 months. They needed.
How long were you feed merchandising?
I was just corn origination, so buying corn, because it was a corn sweetener mill or ethanol plant, if you will. I did that for a year and a half, and then that's when this opportunity came up for, hey, go work in Paris for 6 weeks.
Oh,
it's Paris, Illinois. Sorry.
Oh. Well, I mean, do they speak French there at least?
No, they don't.
Very disappointing, right?
Yeah, but that's how it was presented to me as well. So I always like to make a joke about that. They're like, hey, you want to go work in Paris for a few weeks? I'm like, sure. Illinois, that it is. Okay. So I went over there, and it was a different kind of merchandising. So one is kind of based off the board. This one was more cash trade. So I got to learn a new type of merchandising. And I guess I did well enough, because when I got done, they said, hey, you want to come up to Minneapolis and do a similar job, and it was going to be selling wheat midds from the process of making flour. So as you make flour, you have this byproduct, wheat midds, and they call it that because it's kind of a middle protein. So it's great to go back into feed. So my feed knowledge and then understanding merchandising kind of all came together. And so that was in 2001 when I moved up here to the Twin Cities and started doing that job. And I was in that role for about a year and a half. And then I took a little bit of a career shift and went into supply chain. And so I did supply chain for a couple of years, and it was in flour milling. So kind of a little different application of what I was doing, but it gave me different skills. And the entire time, I mean, this is like 4 or 5 years into my career. Mm-hmm. In the back of my head, I'm still like, I still want to help people learn, grow, develop. And so had this desire and interest to get back to training, teaching, whatever it may be. So I was keeping my eyes open to see what might be available, what would happen. And sure enough, in those 5 years with Cargill, they created their own learning and development. And so they were looking to expand the department. And so they wanted somebody to come in and design leadership training. And I thought, well, this is perfect. And that's for me. So I went and applied, and they're like, well, normally we were kind of looking for somebody with experience. And I'm like, well, I had the business experience, right? I've got 5 years in the business. I don't have any official training, but I'm certified as a teacher. So I understand how to design curriculum, and I understand how to present it. And so they took a chance on me, and I'm glad they did. So I was in corporate learning and development with them for 7 years. As it kind of changed over the years, I mean, by the end of it, my favorite job of all time. I was traveling the world. I was presenting content. I was coaching people. So I was loving it. The problem is that comes with a lot of travel. It's a lot easier to ship the facilitator to the location, and it was great. I got to see a lot of things and, like I said, travel the world. But by that point in time, had 2 girls, one that was 4 and one that was about a year and a half. Yeah.
So now pause for a second. Where did your wife come into this?
as I was up here with Cargill, one night, some friends are like, hey, we need to go out and celebrate. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So let's try someplace new, a place that we don't typically go. We've been to before, but maybe once a year we go to this location. And as we were there, her friends drug her out, made her go to the bar that night too. And so I happened to see her on the dance floor. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll go ask her. And they had me memorize a pickup line. Yeah. So great friends. And I'm like,
I still know the pickup line.
that's the funny part. Nobody remembers it. They had heard it in a movie and were like, oh, you got to try this. And it was kind of a long line. I do remember that part. And so I quickly memorized it. And so when I saw her, I was like, all right, I'll ask. So I came out and I said, hey, can you help me with something? My friends say I should try this line. Let me know what you think of it. I said the line and she's like, it's kind of long. I wouldn't recommend using it again. All right. Well, for suffering through it, can I buy you a beer? And so that was how we met. And shortly after we met, my friends were all like, hey, we want to leave. And I'm like, I just met her. You guys are going to drag me away now? And I just met her. And then her friends were like, well, we can make sure you get home. So I'm like, all right, I'll take a chance. So I stayed at the bar with my future wife. I didn't know it at the time, but stayed with her and her friends for the rest of the night. And to this day, what we all say is probably the pickup line is, hey, can you help me with something? And not necessarily the other line, but just even having the courage to go up and introduce myself.
Oh, that's such a sweet story.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I usually say,
There.
well, right. And I usually tell people, I'm like, yep, I met my wife the old fashioned way, picked her up in a bar.
Perfect.
So yeah, fast forward. That was, we got married in 2004 and then didn't have our first child until 2006.
Mm-hmm.
So we had Abby in 2006 and then 2010 we had Kara. And today, I mean, if you're doing the math, Abby's a senior in high school and Kara's a freshman in high school. So we're getting ready to do the whole go off to college next year thing in our.
Boy.
Yeah.
It seems like you probably think you just went off to college not that long ago, right?
It does. And a lot of the things I'm like, well, that's not how we did it. And she is quick to remind me, that was 30 years ago, Dad. Things have changed in that time.
Oh, I'm glad that she's got enough oomph to give it back to you.
Oh, yeah. I'm not worried about her going into this world on her own and being out there. She's got a good head on her and she's got morals that she sticks by. And so
good.
Yeah, she'll be just fine.
Good. So back to where you were at, travel was getting to be a bit much.
Yep. So when you come downstairs and you got your suitcase and the kids see the suitcase again, and it's Monday morning, it's instant tears and Dad's leaving again. And oh no. And I'm like, this is killing me. Here I am trying to help people be a better leader. And part of that is understanding, like, what are your values and how do you live to your values? And I looked at it and I'm like, I'm not living to my values. If I'm missing part of this or I'm hurting my family, I can't keep doing this. And so I decided, while I love the job, family is still first. Yeah. And so I went looking, and actually it was funny. I went to go meet a friend for coffee, ran into another acquaintance that I knew and was standing there talking to her. And then my friend shows up and it turns out those two had been having email communications. And my friend had a need. And this acquaintance was like, yeah, I'm still working on that. And my friend goes, well, what about Paul? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just here for coffee and, catch up and see what's going on. And so before that day was done or that afternoon was done, I actually had an interview with one of the acquaintances, coworkers, to see if it would be a good fit for me and for them too. And so within 2 weeks, they had made an official offer. And so I was able to stay with Cargill and kind of shifted over to an IT project. They were implementing SAP, which if you know that system, I mean, it's kind of a manage everything inside of your operation, start to finish, invoice and inventory. Well, they were trying to design it to do merchandising. So here's a guy who has merchandising experience. And as they design it, it's something new. So now we need to train people on how to use the new system. Hey, somebody who knows training. So it was a good fit, come over and try and help design training to teach people how to use the new system. So I was still in education, so it still felt like a good fit. I was also actually able to manage people. So all this time I've been trying to train people on how to be a better manager. I'd only managed one individual for about 1.5 years. And so I'm no expert, right? And as I'm in there facilitating, the great part is I don't have to be the expert. So this is what I learned. I wasn't there teaching them. I was there facilitating. And the difference is, as a teacher, a lot of times you look for them to have the answers and or the experience or the knowledge. And so they, they're the expert in the room. And I'm not the expert on leading people if I've only done it for a year and a half with one person. And so facilitator, though, I can call on others. I can help facilitate a conversation amongst the people in the audience or the group and get them to learn from each other. And so that was really eye-opening when I first kind of got the job. And so it carried forward. So this IT job I did for 4 years. And then, like a lot of IT projects, after 4 years, they came back and like, yeah, we can't get the system to do what we want. So we're going to scrap that and go a different route. And during that whole time, my organization that I was part of said, we're going to reorganize and thank you, but your job is no longer here. Mm-hmm. And so I'm telling people now too that, expect sometime during your career, it's probably most people average a 40-year career. Sometime during that career, you're going to be let go. And it's harsh. It's not fun, but it's part of reality that it's just going through some of those things happen. And so when they reorganized and said, thank you, but try and find another job, I looked at Cargill, couldn't find anything. And so I started looking externally and came across this job with Land O'Lakes. And I'm like, leadership development? That's right up my alley. That's what I've been doing I did for 7 years. And so it seemed like a good fit. And I remember one of the early interview questions with Land O'Lakes was like, well, do you know what a co-op is? Or do you know how a co-op works? And I'm like, I grew up in rural Iowa. Yeah, of course I know what co-op is and how it works. And I was just shocked by it. And they're like, well, not everybody does. And I've come to realize that. But yeah, so 9.5 years ago, I came over to Land O'Lakes and have been doing the same job that entire time, which surprises me too. Some days I look at it like, wow, I never would have thought I was doing the same job for almost 10 years, but here I am.
Awesome. And I'm happy you're there because I've gotten to meet you multiple times now.
Yeah.
And, I've met many of your, many of your young members that are looking to, advance their leadership skills and do different things, especially through shout out to the National Milk Producers Federation. If you are a dairy farmer listening, you definitely know what that is. I definitely really valued the young farmer program there and got to work closely with you, Paul, through that. And now I get to see you on a different level with being on the DMI board. So that's really exciting. So, let's dive into, how are you, obviously it's not a one size fits all type thing, but what are some of the things that you do to help, find those? Let's start with that. How are you going out throughout the co-op? I don't know if you want to just kind of let people know how, like, what size co-op you are, like what geographical area you guys cover, and how you're going about vetting and finding these people.
Yeah. And it's no small task. We are a nationwide cooperative. So we have members on the dairy side in Pennsylvania or the Northeast area there. Pennsylvania's got the biggest population, but it goes from New York all the way down to Maryland. And then we have a lot of members here in the upper Midwest, so Wisconsin through the Dakotas, Iowa, Minnesota. I think we still have one in Nebraska. And then we have dairy members out in California. And then Land O'Lakes actually has another side of our business. So we actually have 4 businesses, 2 of which supply side for retail co-ops across the country. So they supply Winfield United and Purina large animal feed. So not everybody knows that both of those kind of fit under Land O'Lakes as well as our dairy division. So with that, I can work with the members of those retail co-ops as well. And so my focus is on any and all of them. So when you start looking at all the numbers, over 1,200 dairy members, and there's over 1,400 of these retail co-ops that we could contact and get in touch with. So the numbers start getting pretty big. So I rely on a lot of our field staff. So there are field staff that go out and call on the dairy members, maintain a relationship on farm for either quality or quality of milk, or making sure that the processes are working right, or even sometimes helping them with their financial planning. And so I rely pretty heavily on those who are out in the field to kind of help make a contact, send names back to me. But we also, reach out across a lot of our networks and be like, hey, Land O'Lakes is looking for people to be a part of this program. I also rely pretty heavily on word of mouth. Mm-hmm. So if you've attended or you've been a part of this, say great things about it and get somebody else to come be a part of it. And so We offer different things. You talked about not one size fits all as well. And I kind of alluded to it a little bit, but there's three kind of main areas that I look at is like, one, the beginning, how do we start to engage with you, right? What does that look like? Why does a co-op need to engage? Why do you, or why should you engage with your co-op? Like that's part of that relationship of being a member of a co-op. So we kind of start with that engagement level. Then we get into being an advocate. So once we get you starting to engage, how do we develop your skills? And then the last part is, great, now how do we help you be more of a leader? What does that look like? And so what are some skills and opportunities there? And so along the way, much like an employee has, I'm like, well, why can't we do this with our members? Why can't we give them a development plan and have them tell us like where they want to go, what they want to do? And so we created a development plan, IDP, we call it, individual development plan. And I flat out asked the members, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? And what are some of your goals? And where do we fit into that? And then after we get that information, then we try and track that and use that to, hey, follow up. Like you were interested in going to Washington, D.C. and we've got an opportunity coming up with National Milk. Would you like to go? And so that's how we kind of keep the ball rolling and once you get people engaged and keep them moving. And right now we're pretty heavy in recruiting for our annual meeting. It's not until beginning of March, but I put on a program kind of right before the annual meeting for members that we talk about how do you be a better advocate? So we call it Advocate for Action. And it's one, helping people understand why we need advocates in agriculture, that there's a shortage. I think the number is down to less than 1.2% of the population is involved in agriculture. How do we get more advocates? And I do it as a program for couples as well, because a lot of times, not everybody works on the farm. And so somebody works off and I tell them, you can still be an advocate for agriculture, even if you don't live or work on a farm. There's still opportunities for you to get out and help spread that. And so we provide a lot of, and this is where my teaching mindset comes in. If you come to one of my programs, I'm going to give you a skill or some knowledge that you can take back and use. Yeah, I want you to have a good time. I want you to enjoy being with us, but you're going to learn something that goes with you that can be applied and help you be a better advocate when you go back. So those are some of the things that I'm trying to look for. And so, yeah, you mentioned there's a couple of members who have participated, been on your podcast here. I love having them involved and engaged, and they're a lot of how I get more people to join and participate too.
Yeah. Yep. Shout out to Alice Brothers. She's been on twice now. I know that she does a lot of work with you, Paul, and refresh me on who else.
Marilyn.
Yes, Marilyn is. Yep.
Yep. So she's a great advocate for us as well. Great partner for us and on the DMI board with you.
I think Marilyn and advocate go hand in hand, like just the name and advocate, they stick together. So,
yeah. Of course. Yeah. She's a great role model for others that I can point to, be like, that's what it looks like.
Definitely. So how do you go about, like, if you have someone that, your field staff said, hey, so-and-so is really great. I'm trying. They say they're too busy. How do you tap in? Because actually, I believe this is a quote from Alex Peterson, and he might have even said this on the podcast. If you want something done, ask the busy person. So how do you tap in to get those people, those young farmers, to take the time out to put forth the effort to be a part of a leadership program or to go, be involved in the co-op?
I wish I had the answer to that. No, it's something different for everybody, right? And there's got to be a compelling thing inside of each person to be like, yep, I know I need to do this. I mean, you're a great example, right? Of somebody made the ask. And a lot of times what it is, because you asked, maybe I hadn't thought about it before, but now that you have, I'll think about it. And just even making the ask of it and really helps people to kind of be like, yeah, I should do that. It doesn't always cross our minds, right? We don't see the volunteers quite as much anymore. So one of the things I'm trying to, I don't want to say sell, trying to put out there and help people to understand is, why is it beneficial for them to attend? What they're going to get out of it. But two, a little bit like I said, especially with this advocacy one, like there's a need. And if I can help present that need and in the same time come across and be like, and we need you. We want you to come do this. And people just don't always think about it themselves. But when you say, I need you to help with this, or we want you, and sometimes even like so-and-so recommended you, that makes a difference too. But just feeling wanted and feeling like somebody does want me to come forward, I see a lot more agreement and like, all right, well, because you will, then I'll participate. And it's really got to be inside, like an internal driver of what people want to do. And I don't get everybody to continue down that pipeline towards elected leadership, and that's okay. It's not for everybody, but at least now we have engaged, you know who we are, and we've got a better connection, better relationship. And that's all probably what really boils down to as well, is starting to build that relationship. So as I'm presenting the need and presenting why we want them to come be a part of it, I'm getting to know them a little bit too. And, I'm fortunate. I don't have a problem going up, talking to people and introducing myself and kind of making connections that way. And so that's a large part of it as well, is just having that connection. And then somebody's like, well, yeah, Paul asked me to do something. Okay, I guess I'll go give it a try if he wants me to.
Definitely. Now, so if someone is listening to this podcast and they are, maybe now that they've listened to this far in the conversation, they're going, man, maybe I should, what words of advice do you have for them? Maybe they're not necessarily a Land O'Lakes member, but they're a member of a different co-op, or maybe they're just, in a completely different sector of the ag industry. What advice do you have for them to go out and get their feet wet and figure out where their path lies?
Yeah, I would think about the organizations that they are part of, whether it is their local co-op, maybe they're part of Farm Bureau, maybe they're part of something in the local community. I mean, we don't just limit it to agriculture that you can be advocate for. It's understanding where else do we need leaders in general. And I think the biggest thing is to look at, one, where are your passions? What are you passionate about? What do you enjoy? So, we talk about going to Washington, D.C. I have people who are not passionate about going up on Capitol Hill and having a conversation about an issue. Great. There's other places. Like, are you more comfortable hosting somebody on your farm?
Yeah.
So one, find where your passions are, and two, find your comfort area. Like, usually what you're passionate about and what you're engaged with, there's going to be opportunity. And if you start looking around or start asking around for the organizations that you're part of, like, hey, do you need help? Are you looking for leaders? Or I want to help, but I'm not sure what to do. Do you have something to help train me, develop me, get me ready to maybe assume a different role of leadership later on? And then, like I said, everybody's looking for somebody to be a part of their organization or to get engaged. And I'm involved with my church. I'm involved in my homeowners association. And there's opportunities all over the place. You just kind of look for what fits. And again, what that passion area makes it a little better. If you're not going to be passionate about it, you're going to get involved with it and be like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? So start with that. Where are you passionate? And then look at the organizations you're part of already and see what they have. Or reach out to me. I mean, yeah, we can talk more about it too. I'm happy to chat with anybody to try and find some opportunities, because I'm not the only one. And I've said this many a time with groups around Minnesota. We're not the only ones looking for people. So the checkoff organization is, Farm Bureau is. So while we're all looking for individuals, maybe we don't fight over who they are, because it's a small pool and, it's always shrinking. And so having conversations with those organizations to be like, how can we share people who are willing to step up? Because the quote from Alex is so true. The busy people are going to be the ones already that are still engaging and doing more. And so rather than us over tapping them, can we share these resources? Like, done a couple of years with Farm Bureau, you're done with that? Great. How would you come to us? And then after us, why don't we connect you with the checkoff group? Or, it varies a little bit the path that everybody takes, but it's about keeping people engaged and sharing, when we find good leaders, let's, not fight over them, but let's continue to find ways to help them find that right fit for themselves too.
Definitely. And I don't think it's a bad thing to try different things until you find what really, what really drives that fire within you to go out and do all of the things. And, you don't necessarily have to be that like outward facing, voice of opinion and, always talking on stage, doing things like that. I think it's also important for people to realize that there's leaders in other capacities, not necessarily that like front facing figure. So even being in a more supportive role or, just finding that one thing that really you can be passionate about, I think is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, reminds me of some of our members. Like, yeah, we have some that are like, oh yeah, I'll step up. I'm happy to be in front. And then there's others that are like, I'm happy to be on the board, but I don't need to be the spokesperson. I don't need to be that, the talking head. I'm fine with being here to share my thoughts in more of a private, board setting and board meeting, but yeah, not willing to always step forward and to lead that way. And you're right. There's opportunities across the board, and you don't have to be that, I'm a great presenter in front of a large group. not always needed. We have people who will do that, yep, and we'll find them, but we need others to continue to support from different paths as well.
100%. I love it. Do you have any other, burning advice for someone who might be interested in becoming a young leader? Other words of advice for someone who's already trying,
Yeah.
Words of wisdom, Paul.
Oh, probably the biggest thing is you're probably going to say, oh, now is not the right time. And I'm going to tell you, it's never going to feel like the right time. Just, yeah, it might be a little challenging at times because it requires some additional travel, or you'll be gone off the farm more, or take some additional of your free time, but it's worth it. And I can say that, yeah, even though it's not the right time or feels difficult, you're always going to have that excuse that it's not the right time. And so when the opportunity comes, take advantage of it and go enjoy it. And you never know what it'll lead to. It might just be the one and done, and that's fine too. But take advantage of the opportunity and not let it get in the way of like, oh, life is busy. Life's always going to be busy.
Yes. And you can get rid of different things and your life is still going to be busy because other things will fill that time.
Yeah, exactly.
Agreed. Coming from someone who literally just goes from one thing to another, I know all about it. If something is important to you, it's important to make it a priority. And that's what actually one of the trainers at the gym that I go to says. You always have time. It's what your priorities are. So if your priority is doing something to better your industry, which would be being a leader in agriculture, if that's a priority to you, then that's something that you have to make the time for.
Exactly. Yep.
I love it. Well, let's get on to just some fun rapid fire questions for you, Mr. Paul. Are you a sweet or savory person?
I am a savory. Not much of a sweet tooth here. The kids are actually, yeah, well, my kids are doing a cookie tray bake sale for church. And so they are making, like, I think my daughter made 200 cookies last night. I haven't had one of them yet.
That's disappointing.
Sorry.
Who is supposed to be the taste tester in the house, Paul? Come on. You're supposed to step up to the plate. Do it for the girls.
Well, they do a pretty good job themselves, so I leave it to them.
All right. Well, I guess that's all right then. If you're going out to like a quick food restaurant, are you a pizza or a burger?
Ooh, that's a tough choice. Both are so good. Probably burger. But I got to clarify. It's got to be cheeseburger at least.
Oh, obviously. That's
okay. Well, just making sure.
That is not even a question on this podcast. It has to be a cheeseburger. There's no such thing as not a cheeseburger.
Okay. Well, good. Just making sure. So,
your favorite music genre?
Country.
Okay. Like new country or old country?
A little bit of both. I mean, so not too old, like probably mid-90s. So you go back to Garth Brooks is one of my favorites, Tim McGraw, and then even some of the newer ones are kind of fun right now too, like Red Atkins, not Red Atkins, what's his name?
Oh, I can picture him. Rhett.
Yes, no. Thomas Rhett.
Thomas Rhett. There we go. Yes, because
knew I could get to it.
Because Red Atkins is his dad, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's very confusing.
For sure.
I'm a huge Luke Combs fan.
I can understand. And I've seen the similarity between he and your husband, so I get it.
I just had to throw that in there because that's the running joke. And for those of you listening that have not seen a picture of my husband, he gets mistaken for Luke Combs in a lot of different public settings.
Yeah, definitely a doppelganger for him there.
If only he had his wallet. Really be dairy farming then.
Yeah, right. No, you'd probably have more horses then.
I don't know if I could handle more horses.
Okay.
I have time to ride them.
Well, that's true.
Oh, dear. I just imagine like dairy. I mean, of course, the wallet would shrink rapidly if I was spending it on dairy farming, but here we are. It's fine. Gosh. Oh, I like this one. If you could time travel, would you go to the past or the future?
Probably the past, because the future is kind of unknown, so I don't know exactly what I would go see. But thinking about the past of like, oh, you know what? The time I'd love to go back to is probably around 1960. And the reason being is both my parents would have been on their family farms. And so I'd love to go back and see what it was like for them and how things ran and who they were as teenagers as well.
If they were rowdy or well-behaved?
A little bit, yeah. hear some stories, but they don't tell everything. So no, I just think that'd be a fun era to kind of go back and one, I mean, I also think about this from the FFA Creed, like, trials of former years. And okay, with the struggles that they've gone through, well, seeing what some of those are, I think might put context into some things that we're facing today to be like, we're not the first ones to experience this. We're not the first ones to have some issues. So just good to see how others have handled it or what they've done with it.
100%. And I love trying to explain that to my kids who still don't quite grasp it, but they're like, why does it matter what happened? Why does it matter what happened? And I was like, you have to learn history because history repeats itself. So you have to kind of know what your forefathers did to figure it out.
Yeah, and learn from your failures and failures of others, not just our own.
Correct. Definitely. And I like your answer as far as going to the past because I'm definitely a check out the past kind of person. The future kind of scares me a little bit, so I'd definitely rather go backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. What's your favorite holiday tradition?
Um, my favorite holiday is 4th of July. And so part of what makes it my favorite holiday is there's this little town in Iowa called Exira that has put on a 4th of July celebration for, I want to say, 125 years. And so it's the same little town celebration with a parade and carnival and all that my parents went to as kids. And I have honestly only missed it twice in my entire life. And both of those times, so, well, yep, I do it all the time. But my wife is like, oh, I have a class reunion on 4th of July. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a priority to you. We're going to go be there. So I know what I'm missing over there at 4th of July, in this little town of Exira. But, so those opportunities of like, yeah, some traditions are good, but at the same time, you got to follow those. Like you said, what's the value and make it a priority? And that was something of hers. So we made it happen.
Definitely. And I like that 4th of July is your favorite holiday because it's not one that people think of, or your favorite holiday tradition. It's not one that people think of immediately. We always have a big party here on the farm on 4th of July. And, it's always a big thing. And sometimes you see people that, you only see once a year at 4th of July. So it's just a nice time to get to see everybody and hopefully enjoy good weather as long as Mother Nature's cooperating and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, exactly. And we always joke too. I mean, so this little town, the parade will last probably 2 hours. And so if there's a fire within a 100-mile radius, every fire truck is in that parade. And so they're going to have problems. But you're right. It's about getting together. So it's almost like a family reunion on my mom's side of the family. And so that's part of what I enjoy most is like we all come back for it. We all go sit and watch the parade. And they do a fun little thing. Like we participated. My kids had done it. But they do foot races before the parade. And so we don't have any kids who run in it anymore, but we still show up in time to sit and watch the little kids run. And it was, for me, it was how you got money to go down to the carnival to ride rides is you had to win and they paid you money. And so it was like, first place was like $3 and you were like excited. Yeah. But, and at that time you could actually go ride a few rides for $3. It was kind of a little different than today when $3 probably won't even get you one ride.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a cool little memory to have and remember it by. So what's your favorite? Okay, I like to ask this pretty much to everybody.
Okay.
Favorite place you've ever traveled, whether it be for work or for fun?
Oh, I got to think on that one for a bit. You got me off guard. Probably, I mean, and I got in trouble for this one time. I told somebody else, like, I have traveled the world and yeah, it's been great, but it was probably, well, and I said some place in the United States. I think it was more, where do you want to live? So anyway, off topic, trying to stall while I can think about it. One of my favorite all times was Germany, actually. I went and had a cousin who was in the Air Force. And so my mom and dad went. All of our first time out of the United States. And so we went and checked out Berlin and Munich and Frankfurt. And so the history and understanding like what happened here and visiting some of the places, but even just taking in the culture and the countryside was one of my favorite memories. And yeah, like I said, first time out of the United States too.
Berlin is very humbling. I have been to Berlin before, gosh, 12, 14 years ago, I went to Berlin, and we were lucky enough to take the train in from where my friends live in Hamburg for the day. And we went to Berlin and did everything. And it is quite a place. I highly, highly recommend it to people who are thinking about doing international travel. So, and it's funny that you said that and it's slipping my mind right now, but someone else just said Germany also.
Okay.
So Germany's a hopping place. We should all go there again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's find an Oktoberfest and go over sometime.
Okay, twist my arm.
All right.
I'm not worried about the beer. I'm worried about as long as there's Spätzle and
It's a bratwurst too. Yeah.
yeah, I'm here for both of those. So yes, and I say it. That's how they say it in the north of Germany. That's how my friends say it because we had a whole lesson, and I can say one sentence in German. That's it.
Okay.
I'm Spanish, but I can say ich liebe meinen kleinen Hund. Do you know what it is?
No.
And you can say that sentence too because it's accurate because of our conversation pre-podcast. So I love my little dog.
Yes, of course.
And I don't know why and it's stuck with me for years and years and years, but it's the only thing I can pretty much say in German. So if I need to ask for anything else in Germany and there's no one that speaks English, I'm in real big trouble. But I can tell them how much I love my little dog, and that's
There you go.
priorities,
Yeah. My dad only learned one phrase to go to Germany. Bier bitte.
I need a beer.
One beer, please. And I told him, I said, that's pretty selfish. What about mom and I? You're not going to get us beers? You're just going to get yourself one? So,
I ask for 3 beers, please.
Exactly.
So with that being your favorite place you've ever traveled, what's your bucket list place to go?
I would love to do a Mediterranean cruise so that you can hit a lot of the countries in the Med and experience them along the way. Cruises are fun if you haven't done one. Not for everybody, I understand, but we like it because your bedroom and all your stuff moves with you while you get to go see other countries and do other things. And that's why I think a cruise going around hitting those countries would be awesome.
That would be wonderful. Yes, Mediterranean cruise sounds good right about now in cold upstate New York.
It's cold here too. I think we finally have temperatures above 0, but it still feels like negative numbers here.
We did not get that cold, thank goodness.
Yeah, we had one day it felt like it was negative 20 outside. So a lot of
for that.
Yeah, and Minnesota gets a bad rap sometimes, like, oh, it's always too cold. But okay, so it's one day and now it warms back up. It's not that big of a deal. We'll move on.
Oh gosh, yeah, winter, not my favorite thing in the world, that's for sure. So, and I didn't warn you about this beforehand. You're welcome.
Uh-oh, surprise!
I like to ask one deep thought question that was left by a previous guest on the podcast.
Okay.
So I try to kind of pick one that fits within, what you're about. And your question is, if you could go back to your 20-year-old self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh boy.
I warned you it wouldn't be I don't want a prepared answer.
Yeah, this is going to be a pretty raw answer then.
It's not going to be wrong. It's your answer.
I would say the best advice that I would tell that version of myself would be that the best days are yet to come. So there will be some good days, there'll be some hard days, but I would say, every day, things keep getting better and that you'll continue to make them better throughout the various things that you do. So, at that time, yeah, the person I was dating, I thought, this is the one. Yeah, that's not who I married. So waiting until you find the right thing for you. But yeah, maybe it's not what you want today, but keep working towards what your goals are and you'll get to where you want to be.
See, and that's a very right answer in my opinion, because I would probably give myself at that time very similar advice. Like scary similar.
Yeah. Well, there's so many things that change from that time to, as you even get out of college and what happens after that. And so, yeah, keep working towards your goals. You'll get there.
Definitely. And it's funny because when you're that age, you're like, I'm an adult. I have to have it all figured out. Like, this is how it's going to be. And then you get older and you're like, I was still a kid. Like, I didn't have it all figured out. I was nowhere as close to having it figured out. I'm in my 30s now and I still don't have it figured out. I just go where the wind takes me. And I'm like, yes, this is where I belong. Or, nah, I don't think that was a really, should have turned left back there and gone the other way. So,
and learn from that and move on. And yeah, I've actually said it here probably in the last couple of weeks. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And we were joking earlier about that of like, yeah, there's times I don't feel like I'm growing up, and then there's others that I got to remind myself, yeah, no, you gotta be an adult today and do adult like things, and not fun, but yeah, you still got to do that.
yes. And I'm sure that that's something that you have to remind your eldest daughter of sometimes also.
Well, yes, and she's also the one that reminds me sometimes, like, come on, Dad, grow up.
You have to be the adult here, Dad. Come on.
Right? Yeah.
It's okay. Keeps you young.
Oh, it does. It does. Yeah.
I was the one always like, Mom, you're having too much fun. Stop embarrassing me. And now I'm that mom. And I'm like, oh, full circle here. I see what you did there. Now I get my girls are going, oh my gosh, would you stop? Like, don't do that. Don't talk to me. Don't sing that song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have one, my freshman, Kara, that I can easily embarrass, and we like to, she plays volleyball, so we like to go there, and she doesn't like that I have a very loud voice, as some might be surprised, not really. So I have a loud voice, and so I'll call out her name and cheer for her when she does something good, and she just kind of gives me that little, like, stop, please don't.
Please shut up.
Yeah, but hey, I like to call it out and give her praise, and so she's learned that she can tell me not to all she wants. I'm still going to do it.
I learned that I am also that parent. My girls, well, actually, my girls and my son all started playing soccer this past fall.
Okay.
My son doesn't care. I can yell to him and cheer him on all day long, and he just doesn't pay any attention to it. Both of my girls, halftime their first soccer game, Mom, could you please not? I'm like, but I'm into it. Like, be happy. I'm like present. I'm here. I'm like excited for you. And they're just like, just don't. And I'm like, but I want to be like the cheerleader on the sidelines. And I never thought before that I'm not a sports oriented person, or like a, school sports oriented person. And I went there and I was like, could really get into this soccer game thing. Yep. Much to my girls' dismay, but that's on them. So I love to end the episode with what quote, motivates you to be your best self. What is your inspirational, drives you to do what you do kind of quote?
Yeah. So this quote I actually found probably, I think I was a freshman in high school, and I had it written on a little slip of paper I carried in my wallet back when I carried a wallet. And it's stuck with me for a long time, and thinking about it for today as well kind of brought back another one, something that my dad would say to me all the time. But so it's a quote from Abraham Lincoln, and studying history a little bit, he was always one of those presidents I kind of found interesting, of like, other than being assassinated and those things, but like what else happened? Like he was doing something that caused such a stir. And I think in today's world, we see some of that too, that some leaders do things that are causing a stir and others are not happy about it. But going back to the quote then, I am not bound to win, but I'm bound to be true. I'm not bound to succeed, but I'm bound to live up to what light I have. And how that connects for me, or what I've been able to kind of go back, is participating in anything, sports or FFA competitions or whatnot. My dad would always say the same thing. Go out there and do your best. And at the end of the day, if you can tell me, regardless of the outcome, that you tried your best or did your best, that's all I need to hear. And I feel like it goes back to this quote of the same thing of like, I'm not always going to win. I'm not always going to succeed, but the light that I have, I can live up to that. So that's doing my best. And if that's not good enough to win, or that's not good enough to come in first place, that's okay, because that's still giving my best. And so I tried to do the same with my kids. One of them is like, oh, I suppose you want me to win. I'm like, no, I want you to say you did your best. You tried your hardest. And if that wasn't good enough to be first place, I don't care. I'm so happy that you were able to at least do that and make it yours. So sorry, we're getting a little afternoon sunlight here.
Good.
And so that quote kind of is like, you know what? You're not always going to be the winner. You're not always going to feel like you were successful, but did you live up to your light? And, or in this case, the other words, did you do your best? And are you happy and content that you tried your best? So that's kind of the quote, and how I've seen it play out for me anyway. And, I think it plays that way in work as well. Like, you're not always trying to be the best or the winner. And there's sometimes when it's like, we as a team do better. And how do we help support that?
I like it. And Abraham Lincoln was a great man, great president. So, oh,
Yeah,
my favorites to learn about as a kid.
yeah, and he's got tons of great quotes of, thinking about the thoughts that that man had. Just amazing what went through his mind.
And very advanced for, back when he was a president. So,
Yeah,
very exciting.
yeah,
Good. I love it. Paul, do you have any last thoughts or anything like that?
yeah. It kind of goes back to how we began the conversation of like where we just saw each other recently. It was like the Dairy Girl Network, and you finding your people, finding your allies, and who's going to be there to help support you and kind of be there. And I feel like that's something that we can all do. I mean, so yeah, being the odd man out there, but it's still supporting women in the industry and women in dairy specifically, but understanding how to be an ally. And so I've talked a little bit about my kids and mentioned my wife a little bit too, but I think back to her having a conversation as we're having kids, like, am I going to be a bad parent if I want to have a career and have children? And I'm like, why is that even a and or kind of situation? It's an and for certain. And so I don't know. I come back to a little bit of like find your allies and support people, and that's why I enjoy doing what I am doing right now of helping people to grow and develop and find their purpose and their meaning. But I'm also feeling like trying to create a place where my daughters, my wife, all feel like I'm not held back. I don't have limitations. I don't have things that are getting in the way. And so encourage people. This would be my last encouragement is, you know what, find your people and find ways to give back and help support others in their growth and development too. Not so much to make it just better for you, but to make it better for that next generation as well.
Awesome. I love it. Paul, where can people connect with you if they are interested in reaching out?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Paul Hansen, Hansen. And then on Instagram, HansMN04. So it's kind of my great grandpa's name was Hanson. So I kind of played off of that a little bit. And then it's MN for Minnesota and then 4, the year that my wife and I got married. So reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn are the two best places. I am also on Facebook as well.
I will be sure to link your Instagram and LinkedIn in the show notes for people to have easy access to. Thank you so much, Paul, for taking the time. It's been absolutely wonderful to get to pick your brain and hear your words of wisdom and get to sit down. Normally when I get to see you, it's kind of like at a, meal table interaction or brief, passing in the hallway. So it was really great to just sit down and get to chat with you for an hour and hear all the great things that you have to say. You are a really great, a great person to have within the industry. And you have done a great job finding some really awesome leaders for not only Land O'Lakes, but dairy in general. And we appreciate that as an industry. So I wanted to thank you for that. And thank you for making the time to come on today.
Well, thank you, Val. Always great chatting with you and appreciate your kind words. Thank you for the opportunity to come share the ramblings of this mind at times. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Dairy Hour podcast. If you learned a few things in this episode or if this episode resonated with you, please be sure to share it with a friend, share it to your socials, and be sure to tag me and tag Paul as well. We would love to see that. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.